My name is Serenity. I'm 28 years old, and I'll never forget the day my parents sat me down in our living room with champagne glasses in hand, celebrating my Stanford acceptance letter, only to tell me they wouldn't pay a single penny for my education. Before I share how this changed everything, let me know where you're watching from today. And if you've ever felt abandoned by those who should support you most, please like and subscribe to hear how I turned their rejection into my greatest victory. Growing up in Westport, Connecticut, I always believed I was one of the lucky ones. My father worked as a financial advisor at a prestigious firm in Manhattan, while my mother ran her own successful real estate agency specializing in luxury homes along the Gold Coast. We lived in a beautiful colonial house with 5 bedrooms, a pool in the backyard, and a 3-car garage that housed my father's Mercedes, my mother's Lexus, and the BMW they'd bought for my older brother when he turned 18. From the time I could understand words, my parents drilled into me the importance of education. Serenity, my father would say during our nightly dinners, your education is the one investment that will never depreciate. That's why we started saving for your college fund before you were even born. My mother would nod in agreement, adding how they'd sacrificed vacations to Europe and delayed renovating the kitchen just to ensure my brother and I would graduate from college debt-free. And I believed them. Why wouldn't I? Every month they'd mention putting money into what they called our future funds. They enrolled me in Greenwich Academy, one of the most expensive private schools in the state, where tuition ran $45,000 a year. When I struggled with calculus in 10th grade, they hired a tutor who charged $200 an hour without batting an eye. Nothing is too expensive when it comes to your future, my mother said, writing the check. I threw myself into my studies with the dedication of someone who understood the privilege I'd been given. While my classmates partied on weekends, I volunteered at Greenwich Hospital, accumulating over 500 hours of service. I joined the debate team, became president of the student council, and founded a tutoring program for underprivileged kids in Bridgeport. My GPA never dropped below a 4.0. I scored a 1540 on my SATs after taking them twice. And even that wasn't without thousands of dollars in prep courses my parents eagerly paid for. Junior year, my parents hired a college consultant named Dr. Patricia Winters. She cost $5,000 for her basic package, but my parents upgraded to the premium service at $15,000, which included unlimited essay reviews and mock interviews. We spent weekends touring colleges, flying to California to visit Stanford, and USC, driving up to Boston for Harvard and MIT, making our way down to Princeton and Yale. My parents took time off work for every single tour. My mother kept a binder with colored tabs for each school, meticulously organizing every piece of information we gathered. Stanford feels right, I told them after our campus visit. The palm trees, the Spanish architecture, the entrepreneurial spirit, everything about it resonated with me. My father squeezed my shoulder and said, "Then Stanford it is, sweetheart. Don't worry about the cost. That's what we've been saving for." The application process consumed our entire household for months. My father helped me brainstorm essay topics during his lunch breaks. My mother proofread every draft until her eyes went blurry. They drove me to every interview, waited in the car for hours, and celebrated each small milestone. When I submitted my early action application to Stanford, we opened a bottle of champagne that my parents had been saving for a special occasion. The acceptance letter came on a Friday afternoon in December. I remember because I was home with the flu, feeling miserable on the couch, when my phone buzzed with the email notification. My hands shook as I logged into the portal. "Congratulations," the screen read. I screamed so loudly that my mother came running from her home office thinking I was hurt. Within minutes, my father was driving home from work, leaving a client meeting early. By evening, they'd invited half the neighborhood over for an impromptu celebration. My mother ordered catering from the fancy Italian place in town. My father gave a speech that brought tears to everyone's eyes, talking about how proud he was and how this was just the beginning of my journey to changing the world. But even during that magical evening, I should have noticed the signs. Over the past year, my parents had made some significant purchases. They'd finally done that kitchen renovation they'd been putting off. But instead of the modest update, they'd always discussed they'd gone all out with Italian marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. The project cost $80,000, according to the contractor's truck that had been parked in our driveway for 3 months. Then there was the new BMW 7 Series my father bought himself for his 50th birthday, claiming he needed to look the part for his wealthy clients. The country club membership they'd suddenly decided was essential for networking came with a $30,000 initiation fee. They'd even bought a vacation home in the Hamptons, justifying it as an investment property that would appreciate over time. But I was too caught up in my own future to really question any of it. After all, they'd always said the college fund was separate, untouchable, sacred even. So when they asked me to join them for a family meeting the day after the Stanford celebration, I assumed we'd be discussing logistics like dorm selections and meal plans. The meeting was scheduled for Sunday afternoon, 2 days after the celebration. My parents had set up in my father's home office, a room that usually felt warm with its mahogany furniture and walls lined with financial planning certificates. But that day, something felt different. They'd arranged 3 chairs in a formal triangle instead of our usual casual seating. My mother had printed out what looked like a prepared document. My father was wearing his business suit on a weekend, which should have been my first real warning. "Serenity, honey, please sit down," my mother said, her voice carrying an unusual formality. She was wearing her pearl necklace, the one she only wore for important occasions. My father cleared his throat the way he did before difficult client conversations. "We want to start by saying how incredibly proud we are of you." My father began reading from the paper in front of him, actually reading from it like he'd rehearsed this. "Your acceptance to Stanford is a testament to your hard work, dedication, and intelligence." "Thanks," I said slowly, confusion creeping in. "But why does this feel like a business meeting?" My parents exchanged a look I'd seen before, the one they shared, when they had to tell my brother his car was being taken away after his DUI. "Serenity." My mother took over. "Your father and I have done a lot of thinking about your future, about what's really best for you in the long run. We've given you every advantage for 18 years. Private school tutors, test prep, a beautiful home, everything you've needed, and most things you've wanted." "I know, and I'm grateful," I interrupted, my heart beginning to race. "I've always appreciated everything you've done for me." "We know you have," my father said, "which is why we believe you're ready for the next phase of your development. Real independence, real self-sufficiency." The word independence hung in the air like a threat. "What does that mean?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "We've decided that the best gift we can give you now is the gift of self-reliance." My mother said, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles were white. "We will not be paying for your college education." The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually laughed, certain this was some kind of twisted joke. "Very funny. You almost got me." "This isn't a joke, Serenity," my father said firmly. "We're completely serious. We believe that paying your way through college yourself will teach you invaluable lessons about hard work, money management, and appreciation that you simply can't learn any other way." "But you said you'd been saving since before I was born," I managed to choke out. "You said education was the most important investment." "And it is," my mother replied smoothly, "which is why you should be the one investing in it. When people pay for something themselves, they value it more. They work harder. They don't take it for granted." "So the college fund," I asked, my voice barely a whisper, "the money we saved is being redirected to other investments," my father said, not meeting my eyes. "The rental property in the Hamptons, some promising stocks. These will generate returns that will benefit the whole family eventually." "You're using my college money for a beach house?" The reality was starting to sink in, and with it came a rage I'd never felt before. "It's not your money, Serenity," my father said sharply. "It's our money that we saved. We have the right to use it however we see fit." "But you promised," I said, tears starting to fall. "You literally promised. For 18 years you promised." "Plans change," my mother said. "We've adjusted our approach based on what we believe is best for your character development. You're strong, smart, capable. You don't need us to hand you everything." "I'm not asking you to hand me everything," I pleaded. "I'm asking you to keep your word about one thing. The one thing you always said was guaranteed." "If you want to go to Stanford badly enough, you'll find a way," my father said. There are loans, scholarships, work-study programs. Millions of kids do it every year. Those kids don't have parents with a $500,000 income and a house in the Hamptons. I shot back. I won't qualify for need-based aid because of your income. You know that. Then take out loans, my mother suggested, as if it were that simple. I need co-signers for private loans. I'm 18 with no credit history. Well, we won't be co-signing anything, my father said firmly. That would defeat the entire purpose of this lesson in independence. I stared at them, these people I'd called my parents, and felt like I was seeing strangers. So what exactly are you offering? You can live here rent-free while attending community college, my mother said, as if this were generous. We'll provide food and basic necessities. After 2 years, you can transfer to a state school, which is much more affordable. Community college, I repeated flatly. After everything I've worked for, after getting into Stanford. It's a practical solution, my father said. Many successful people started at community colleges. Did you? I challenged him. When Grandpa paid for your full ride at Dartmouth, did you consider community college? His face reddened. That was different. How times were different. The economy was different. Everything was different. The only thing that's different is you've decided your beach house is more important than your promise to me, I said, standing up. Sit down, Serenity. We're not finished, my mother commanded. Yes, we are, I said. Unless you're going to change your mind, we have nothing left to discuss. We're not changing our minds, my father said. This is final. You have a week to decide whether you want to accept our offer of living here while attending community college, or if you want to forge your own path entirely. I looked at them one last time, these people who'd pushed me to excel, who'd invested hundreds of thousands in my preparation, only to pull the rug out at the finish line. I don't need a week, I said quietly. I'll forge my own path. My mother's composure cracked slightly. Don't be dramatic, Serenity. You're being emotional. No, I said, heading for the door. For the first time, I'm being clear-eyed about who you really are. I spent the rest of that day in my room, calling my grandparents, aunts, uncles, anyone who might talk sense into my parents. My grandmother cried on the phone, said she'd give me her entire savings, but it was only $20,000. Barely enough for one semester. My grandfather raged about my father being ungrateful for getting where he came from, but he had no real influence anymore. My aunts and uncles were sympathetic but unwilling to get involved. It's between you and your parents, they said one after another. The family politics were too complicated, the risk of taking sides too great. The next morning, I walked into my guidance counselor's office before first period. Mrs. Thompson had been helping students navigate college admissions for 20 years, but when I explained my situation, she looked genuinely stunned. Your parents are refusing to pay anything, she repeated as if she'd misheard. Or even co-sign loans. Nothing, I confirmed. They want me to learn independence. She immediately picked up her phone. I'm calling them. This is insane, Serenity. You're our valedictorian. You got into Stanford. But the conversation went nowhere. I could hear my father's voice through the phone, calm and condescending, explaining their parenting philosophy to Mrs. Thompson, as if she were a child who didn't understand complex financial planning. After she hung up, Mrs. Thompson looked defeated. I've seen parents make a lot of mistakes, but this might be the worst. Let's look at your options. We spent hours researching, but the reality was brutal. Most scholarship deadlines had passed. The few that remained were highly competitive and wouldn't cover full tuition. Federal loans would max out at $5,500 for my freshman year, nowhere near Stanford's $70,000 annual cost. Private loans required co-signers or established credit. What about deferring enrollment? Mrs. Thompson suggested. Take a gap year, work, save money, establish credit. It wasn't ideal, but it was something. Stanford would hold my spot for 1 year. Maybe in that time my parents would come to their senses. Or maybe I'd figure out another way. That evening at dinner, my parents acted like nothing had happened. My mother had made my favorite meal, salmon with asparagus, as if food could smooth over their betrayal. We heard you spoke with Mrs. Thompson today, my father said casually. She called us quite upset, my mother added. That was inappropriate Serenity trying to turn people against us. I was seeking advice, I said, not touching my food. Since my parents have abandoned me, I needed an adult who actually cares about my future. Don't be melodramatic, my father said. We haven't abandoned you. We're teaching you valuable life lessons. By breaking your promises, by choosing a beach house over my education. That's a gross oversimplification, my mother said. Is it? You have $300,000 sitting in an account. Money you specifically said was for my education, and you're refusing to use it for that purpose. How else should I interpret that? That money is being invested wisely, my father said. In 10 years, it will be worth triple what it is now. And in 10 years, I'll either be drowning in debt or will have never gone to college at all. But hey, at least you'll have a nice return on your investment. The next few days were torture. Word had gotten around school that I was deferring Stanford. Everyone assumed there was some family emergency, a health crisis, or financial catastrophe. I let them believe it. The truth was too humiliating. My friend Emma, whose parents were paying full tuition for her to attend NYU, tried to comfort me. Maybe it's for the best, she said. A gap year could be really enlightening. Yeah, I agreed hollowly. Super enlightening. But it was my English teacher, Mrs. Martinez, who provided the first real lifeline. She asked me to stay after class on Thursday, closing the door behind us. I heard about your situation, she said gently. Mrs. Thompson told me I hope that's okay. I nodded, too tired to be upset about people knowing. I want to help, she said. I can't pay for Stanford, obviously, but I have connections. My husband works in HR at several companies that offer education benefits. My sister runs a nonprofit that provides emergency grants to students. Let me make some calls. Why would you do that for me? I asked, overwhelmed by the kindness from someone who had no obligation to help. Because you're brilliant, Serenity, and because what your parents are doing is cruel, whether they want to admit it or not. Talent like yours shouldn't be wasted because of some misguided attempt at tough love. That weekend, I made my decision. If my parents wanted me to be independent, I'd be independent. I found a room for rent in Stanford, $500 a month, sharing an apartment with 3 other people. I applied for jobs at every restaurant, retail store, and grocery store within bus distance. I opened my own bank account and started researching community college courses I could take while working. When I told my parents I was moving out, they were shocked. You're being ridiculous, my mother said. You're 18 years old. You can't just move out. You said I needed to be independent, I reminded them. This is what independence looks like. We meant independent in terms of paying for college, my father clarified, not leaving home entirely. You don't get to cherry pick what kind of independence you force on me, I said. You wanted me to be an adult to make my own way. That's what I'm doing. Where will you even go? My mother demanded. I found a place. I start work at 2 restaurants next week. I'll take online community college courses at night. This is insane, my father said. You're throwing away your future out of spite. No, I corrected him. I'm building my future without you, just like you wanted. They tried to stop me, threatened to cut off my phone, my health insurance, everything. But I'd already prepared for that. I'd gotten my own phone plan, found a job that offered basic health coverage after 90 days. I'd thought through every angle. The morning I moved out, my mother stood in my doorway, tears streaming down her face. Please don't do this, Serenity. Just stay home, go to community college, we'll work something out. You mean you'll hold housing over my head every time I don't do what you want? I asked, carrying a box of belongings to my secondhand car. I'd bought with graduation money from relatives. No thanks. You're going to regret this, my father said from behind her. You're going to realize how hard the real world is and come crawling back. Maybe, I said, but at least I'll know that everything I achieve is actually mine. The first year was hell. There's no other way to describe it. My room in Stanford was basically a closet with a twin bed and a tiny dresser. The apartment was infested with cockroaches that scattered whenever I turned on the light. My roommates were nice enough, but kept different schedules, so someone was always making noise when I needed to sleep or study. I worked the breakfast and lunch shift at a diner called Rosie's from 5 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, then rushed to my retail job at Target from 3 to 11 at night. On weekends, I picked up extra shifts and added a third job tutoring high school kids in SAT prep, charging $30 an hour using all the test-taking strategies my parents had paid thousands for me to learn. My daily food budget was $5. Breakfast was free at the diner, usually eggs and toast from orders that were made wrong. Lunch was a cup of soup and crackers, also from the diner. Dinner was ramen or pasta with butter. On good days when customers tipped well, I'd splurge on a bag of apples or some peanut butter for protein. I lost 20 pounds in 3 months, not because I was trying to, but because I was constantly moving and barely eating. My manager at the diner, an older woman named Maria, started sneaking me extra food, claiming the cook had made too much and it would just go to waste. "You're too skinny, mija," she'd say, pushing a container of leftover meatloaf into my hands. "Eat." 3 months in, I collapsed during a shift at Target. Just dropped while restocking shelves, waking up in the break room with my manager holding a glucose packet to my lips. "When's the last time you ate a real meal?" he asked. I couldn't remember. The emergency room visit cost me $1,500 with the basic insurance from Target. Dehydration and exhaustion, they said. Nothing serious, just a warning. But $1,500 might as well have been $15,000. It went on a payment plan, $25 a month for the next 5 years. My parents found out about the hospital visit through my aunt, who worked at the same hospital. My mother called crying, begging me to come home. "This is killing me, Serenity," she sobbed, "knowing you're suffering like this." "Then help me," I said simply. "Co-sign a loan. Give me even part of what you promised." "We can't," she said after a pause. "We've committed to this course. Your father says if we give in now, you'll never learn the lesson." "What lesson?" I asked. "That my parents' love is conditional, that promises mean nothing. Trust me, I've learned those lessons perfectly." She hung up on me. My birthday came and went with a card from them containing a $50 Amazon gift card and a note about how struggle builds character. I used the gift card to buy textbooks for my community college courses. I was taking 12 credits online while working 60+ hours a week. Introduction to Business English Composition Calculus I, and Introduction to Psychology. I did homework on my breaks at work, studied on the bus, wrote essays on my phone when the ancient laptop I'd bought from a pawn shop crashed. My grades were perfect, a 4.0 that felt both essential and meaningless. Essential because it was my only hope for scholarships, later meaningless because I was killing myself to achieve it. Meanwhile, social media was torture. My high school friends posted constantly from their colleges. Emma at NYU going to parties in Manhattan. Jake at Yale joining a prestigious secret society. Sarah at Duke complaining about how hard her sorority rush was. And there I was cleaning toilets at Target at midnight, wondering if any of this would ever pay off. The one bright spot was Mrs. Martinez, who checked in on me weekly. She'd meet me for coffee, which she always paid for, and review my transfer applications. She'd connected me with her sister's nonprofit, which gave me a small grant of $2,000 that covered my community college tuition for the year. "You're going to make it through this," she'd say every time we met. "I've seen a lot of students over the years, and you have something special. This struggle, as horrible as it is, it's building something in you that money can't buy." "Grit," I asked sarcastically one day, exhausted from a double shift. "Purpose," she corrected. "You know exactly what you're fighting for now. That's powerful." Second year was marginally better. I'd learned to navigate the system. I knew which restaurants threw out perfectly good food at closing time. I found a food bank that didn't ask too many questions. I discovered that if I volunteered to close at Target, the overnight manager would let me take home returns that couldn't be resold damaged boxes of granola bars or dented cans of soup. I'd also gotten promoted to shift leader at the diner, which came with a $2 raise and the ability to take home any leftover baked goods. My room was now filled with day-old muffins and slightly stale Danish that became my breakfast for the week. Community college was going well. My professors wrote glowing letters of recommendation. One of them, Dr. Chen, who taught business, pulled me aside after class one day. "You're one of the strongest students I've taught in 20 years, he said. "Where are you planning to transfer in the state university if I can afford it?" I said. "Aim higher," he urged. "Your grades, your story, you could get significant scholarships to better schools. Don't limit yourself because of money." Easy for him to say, but I started researching anyway. Some universities had started programs for non-traditional students, people who'd taken gap years or started at community colleges. The applications were extensive, requiring essays about overcoming challenges. Well, I certainly had material for that. I applied to 15 schools using fee waivers when possible, and spending my precious savings on application fees when not. Each application was a marathon completed late at night after work, my eyes burning from exhaustion. My 21st birthday came with another card from my parents this time, with a $100 check and a newspaper clipping about a young entrepreneur who'd started with nothing and built a $1 million company. The passive-aggressive message was clear. I cashed the check and used it for application fees. The acceptances started coming in March: State University with a partial scholarship, University of Connecticut with a merit grant, and then the miracle I hadn't dared hope for: Boston University with a full need-based scholarship for transfer students covering tuition, room, and board. I called Mrs. Martinez first, crying so hard I couldn't speak. "I knew it," she kept saying. "I knew you'd do it." I didn't tell my parents. They found out through Facebook when I posted about it. My mother called immediately. "Boston University, that's wonderful," she said, her voice strained. "We're proud of you." "Thanks," I said flatly. "Will you come to dinner to celebrate?" she asked. "We haven't seen you in over a year." "I'm working," I said, which was true but also an excuse. "Every single day." "Pretty much, yeah. That's what independence looks like, remember?" There was a long pause. "We never wanted this serenity. We wanted you to appreciate things more, to understand the value of money." "Oh, I understand it," I said. "I understand that $5 can be the difference between eating and not eating. I understand that a $25 insurance copay means choosing between medicine and transportation. I understand value in ways you'll never have to. Congratulations, your lesson worked." Boston was a fresh start, though the wounds from the past 3 years were far from healed. I arrived on campus with 2 suitcases and a backpack, everything I owned in the world. My dorm room, a tiny single in Warren Towers, felt like a palace compared to where I'd been living. It had heat that actually worked, no cockroaches, and a meal plan that meant I could eat 3 times a day without calculating the cost of every bite. But I couldn't shake the survival mentality. While other students complained about the dining hall food, I loaded my backpack with fruit and granola bars, still hoarding food like I might not eat tomorrow. When classmates went out for $20 brunches, I stayed in, saving every penny from my work-study job at the library. The academic adjustment was easier than the social one. After 3 years of studying in break rooms and on buses, having actual time and space to focus felt luxurious. I threw myself into my classes, majoring in business with a minor in computer science skills I knew were marketable. My professors at BU were different from community college, more demanding, but also more connected. Professor Williams, who taught entrepreneurship, was a former startup founder who'd sold his company for millions. He took an interest in me after reading my essay about building a tutoring business while homeless. "You weren't really homeless," he said during office hours. "I was one missed paycheck away from it," I replied. "That's close enough." He offered me a research assistant position that paid $15 an hour, double minimum wage, 20 hours a week of analyzing startup trends and market data. It was the first job I'd ever had that used my brain instead of just my body. Junior year, everything accelerated. Through Professor Williams, I got an internship at a tech startup called EduPath that was building online learning platforms. The founder, a woman named Jessica, who'd also come from nothing, became my first real mentor in the business world. "You remind me of myself 10 years ago," she said after I'd stayed late to fix a bug in our code that the senior developers had missed. "Hungry in a way that has nothing to do with food." She started giving me real responsibilities, letting me lead client presentations, develop new features. When I graduated summa cum laude from BU, she offered me a full-time position at $70,000 a year. It was more money than I'd ever imagined making, but I turned it down. "I want to build something myself," I told her, terrified she'd be offended. Instead, she smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. How about this? Instead, you contract with us part-time while building your own thing, $40 an hour, make your own schedule." It was generous beyond belief. I accepted immediately. My own thing was a platform connecting first-generation and low-income college students with mentors and resources. I called it Bridge Gap and built the first version myself using skills I'd learned at EduPath. Within 6 months, I had 1,000 users. Within a year, 10,000. That's when James came into my life. He was an investor young for the role at 30 who'd heard about Bridge Gap through a mutual connection. We met for coffee to discuss funding, but the conversation went 3 hours and ranged from business to philosophy to our shared experiences of financial struggle. My parents disowned me when I dropped out of law school to start my first company, he told me. They said I was wasting my potential. Mine refused to pay for college to teach me independence, I shared. So I guess we both learned it the hard way. He laughed, but there was understanding in his eyes. The hard way seems to be the only way for people like us. We started dating slowly, both of us, too focused on work to rush anything. But he understood my drive in a way no one else had. When I worked 18-hour days, he didn't complain, just brought me dinner. When I had panic attacks about money, despite having six figures in savings, he didn't judge, just helped me breathe through it. Bridge Gap grew exponentially. We raised a seed round of $500,000, with James abstaining from the investment to avoid conflicts. Then Series A of $2 million. By 26, I was running a company with 30 employees and 50,000 active users. The media attention started small, a mention in TechCrunch, a profile in the Boston Globe. But when Forbes included me in their 30 under 30 list for education, everything exploded. Suddenly, I was being invited to speak at conferences, universities were asking me to give graduation speeches, and my story was being shared across social media as inspiration porn. That's when my parents reached out again. The first attempt was an email from my mother forwarded by my aunt, since I'd long since blocked their direct addresses. It was full of pride and love, talking about how they'd always known I was special, how they'd followed my journey from afar, how impressed they were with my achievements. I didn't respond. The second attempt was a package sent to my office, a framed photo of me from high school, with a note from my father about how he kept my picture on his desk and told all his clients about his successful daughter. I donated the frame to Goodwill. The third attempt came through my grandmother, who called crying, begging me to forgive them. They made a mistake, Serenity. They see that now. Your father's business is struggling. Your mother's had some health issues. They need their daughter. They needed their daughter 8 years ago, too, I said gently. But they chose a beach house instead. That's not fair, she protested. They thought they were doing the right thing. And I'm doing what I think is right now, I said. I'm protecting myself from people who showed me their love was conditional. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor. 2 weeks after that call, I ran into them at a restaurant in Boston. I was there for a business dinner with potential investors. They were there for their anniversary, looking older and smaller than I remembered. My mother saw me first, her face crumbling. She half stood like she might approach, but my father pulled her back down. Instead, they sent over a bottle of champagne with a note, "Congratulations on everything, love Mom and Dad." I sent it back untouched. My investors were confused. Family drama, one asked diplomatically. Something like that, I said, returning to our discussion about market penetration and user acquisition costs. But I couldn't focus. Seeing them had shaken something loose, a grief I'd buried under years of grinding work. James noticed immediately when I got home. "What happened?" he asked, pulling me into his arms. I told him everything, crying for the first time in years about the parents who'd chosen to teach me a lesson instead of keeping a promise. "Do you want to reconnect with them?" he asked carefully. "I don't know," I admitted. Part of me wants them to see what I've built, to understand that I did it, despite them, not because of them. But part of me never wants to speak to them again. "You don't have to decide tonight," he said, "or ever if you don't want to." But fate decided for me. A month later, my aunt called. My father had suffered a heart attack. He was stable, but facing months of recovery. His business had already been struggling, and this would likely end it. My mother was barely holding it together. I sent flowers, but didn't visit. Then came the call from my mother herself, somehow finding my new number. "I'm not calling to guilt you," she said immediately. "I just wanted you to know that we were wrong. We were so terribly wrong. We thought we were teaching you a lesson about self-reliance, but all we taught you was that you couldn't rely on us. And now when we need you most, we have no right to ask for anything." "You're right," I said. "You don't." "I know," she said, crying now. "But I'm asking anyway. Not for money or help or even forgiveness. Just for a conversation. One dinner. Let us apologize properly. Let us see the woman you've become, even if we don't deserve to." I thought about it for 3 days, discussing it with James, my therapist, even Jessica, who'd become a close friend. Finally, I agreed, but on my terms. Dinner at a restaurant I chose, time limited to 90 minutes, James present as support. The restaurant I selected was intentionally neutral, a mid-scale Italian place in Cambridge, not fancy enough to feel like a celebration, but not casual enough to minimize the gravity of the moment. James and I arrived first, and I chose seats that gave me a clear view of the door, an old habit from years of hypervigilance about every environment. My parents arrived 5 minutes early, looking uncertain at the entrance until they spotted us. My father had lost weight since the heart attack, his face gaunt, his expensive suit hanging loose. My mother's hair was more gray than I remembered her usually perfect makeup, unable to hide the stress lines around her eyes. They approached slowly, and I stood not for a hug, but for a formal handshake. My mother's face crumpled at the gesture, but she accepted it. "Thank you for coming," my father said, his voice weaker than the commanding tone I remembered. "This is James." "Yes," I said, simply, not providing any additional information about our relationship. We sat the silence thick until the waiter arrived. We ordered quickly, everyone eager for the distraction. "You look wonderful, Serenity," my mother ventured. "Success suits you." "I wouldn't know what suits me," I replied. "I've only ever known survival and success. Nothing in between." My father flinched. "We deserve that." "You deserve more than that, but I'm trying to be civil," I said. James placed his hand over mine under the table, a gentle reminder to breathe. "We've been following your career," my mother said. "The Forbes article, the company you built. It's extraordinary." "It's mine," I said firmly. "Every bit of it is mine. Built with my work, my sacrifice, my sleepless nights. You gave me nothing but a lesson in betrayal, and I turned that into something anyway." "We know," my father said quietly. "We know we gave you nothing when we had everything to give. We told ourselves it was good parenting, tough love, character building. But it was just cruel." "Why?" I asked the question I'd wanted answered for 8 years. "Why did you really do it? And don't give me the independence excuse. Tell me the truth." They exchanged a look, and my mother nodded at my father. "We were broke," he admitted. "Not completely, but in trouble. I'd made some bad investments, over-leveraged ourselves on the properties. The college fund existed, yes, but we'd already borrowed against it. The beach house wasn't an investment, it was a desperate attempt to flip something for profit." I stared at them. "So instead of telling me the truth, you made it about teaching me a lesson?" "We were ashamed," my mother said. "We'd spent so many years being the successful parents, the ones who had it all together. The thought of admitting we'd failed, that we'd lost your college money, it seemed worse than letting you think we were choosing not to help." "You let me think you didn't love me enough to keep your promise," I said slowly. "You let me work myself into the hospital, live in squalor, eat ramen for 3 years, all because you were too proud to admit you'd made a mistake." "Yes," my father said simply. "And it's the worst thing I've ever done. Worse than losing the money, worse than failing at business. I failed as your father." The food arrived, but nobody touched it. "The business never recovered, did it?" I asked. "No," he admitted. "Clients found out about the financial troubles, left for more stable advisors. The heart attack was probably stress-related. We're selling the house, moving to a condo. Your mother's working part-time as a receptionist to cover health insurance." "The mighty have fallen," I observed without sympathy. "Serenity," my mother pleaded. "We're not asking for your forgiveness. We know we don't deserve it. We're not asking for money, though God knows we could use it. We're just asking if there's any possibility, any at all, that we could have some small part in your life." "I have parents," I said, thinking of Mrs. Martinez, who still called me weekly, of Jessica, who'd mentored me through every business challenge. "I found people who acted like parents when you chose not to. I don't need you anymore." "But we need you," my mother whispered. "Exactly," I said. "Now you need me. Now when I have something to offer." Where was this need when I was 18 and scared? When I was sick and alone? When I graduated from BU with no family in the audience? "We were cowards," my father said. "We convinced ourselves you were better off, that our presence would undermine the independence we'd forced on you. But really, we were just too ashamed to face what we'd done." I looked at them, really looked at them. They seemed smaller, diminished, like the aftermath of a fire that had burned too hot and left only ash. Part of me wanted to rage at them, to list every moment of suffering they'd caused. But a bigger part just felt tired. "I'll help you," I said finally, and my mother started crying. "But not as your daughter, as a philanthropist. My company has a program for people facing financial hardship. You can apply like anyone else. If you qualify, we'll provide assistance with budgeting, job training, maybe even some emergency funds." "We're your parents," my father said weakly. "No," I corrected. "You were my parents. You gave up that right when you chose your pride over your promise. Now you're just people who need help. And lucky for you, I help people. It's what I do. It's who I became, despite you." I pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table. "This is my assistant's contact. She'll send you the application. Everything will go through her. This is the only help I'm offering." "Will we see you again?" my mother asked. "Maybe at family events where we can't avoid each other," I said. "But not like this. Not as parents and daughter. That relationship ended 8 years ago when you handed me that ridiculous speech about independence." I stood to leave, James rising with me. The food remained untouched, already growing cold. "For what it's worth," I said, looking back at them one last time. "The independence you forced on me did teach me something valuable. It taught me that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. It taught me that I can survive anything. And most importantly, it taught me that real love, real family doesn't come with conditions or contracts or lessons. It just loves. So thank you for that lesson, even if it wasn't the one you intended to teach." The months following that dinner were complicated in ways I hadn't anticipated. My parents applied for assistance through Bridge Gap, and my team approved them without my input, exactly as I'd requested. They received budget counseling. My father got connected with a nonprofit that helped older professionals restart their careers, and they got a small emergency grant to help with medical bills. I reviewed their file once, noting with bitter irony that they qualified for exactly the kind of help I could have used 8 years earlier. James and I got married the following spring in a small ceremony with only our chosen family present. Mrs. Martinez walked me down the aisle, tears streaming down her face as she whispered how proud she was. Jessica gave a toast about watching me transform from a scared but determined young woman into a force of nature. My team from Bridge Gap, who'd become like siblings to me, celebrated, like we'd just closed another funding round. My biological parents weren't invited, though. I heard through my aunt that my mother spent the day looking at my wedding photos on social media, crying over the daughter she'd lost through her own choices. The real transformation in my life came when I started therapy specifically to deal with the trauma of those years. Dr. Kim, a specialist in family estrangement and financial trauma, helped me understand that my hypervigilance about money, my inability to enjoy success, my constant fear that everything could disappear, these weren't character flaws, but survival mechanisms that had outlived their purpose. "You're still living like that 19-year-old who collapsed at Target," she observed during one session. "Your bank account has changed, but your nervous system hasn't caught up." She was right. Despite having millions in company equity and personal savings, I still hoarded food. I still worked 18-hour days, as if stopping might mean losing everything. I still checked my bank balance obsessively multiple times a day, needing to confirm the numbers were real. Slowly, with James's support and Dr. Kim's guidance, I started to heal. I learned to take vacations without my laptop. I learned to buy things I wanted, not just needed. I learned to trust that the stability I'd built wouldn't vanish the moment I relaxed. Bridge Gap grew beyond my wildest dreams. We expanded nationally, then internationally. Our user base hit 500,000 students. Major universities started partnering with us to support their first-generation students. When Microsoft offered to acquire us for $40 million, I actually considered it. "You could retire at 30, James pointed out over dinner. "And do what?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. "Anything, nothing. Whatever you want." The freedom in that statement was both thrilling and terrifying. In the end, I sold a majority stake but stayed on as CEO, using the money to launch a foundation providing emergency grants to students in crisis, the kind of help that could have changed everything for me. The foundation's first major event was a gala in Boston, Corporate sponsors, university presidents, even a few celebrities who'd heard about our work. I was giving the keynote about why this work mattered, and as I stood at the podium looking out at 500 people who'd paid $1,000 a plate to support students in need, I saw them. My parents at a table in the back, the cheapest seats in the house. My aunt must have bought them tickets. My first instinct was anger, then anxiety, but as I began speaking, something else took over. 8 years ago, I was accepted to Stanford University. I began. It should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day I learned that promises could be broken, that love could be conditional, and that sometimes the people who should protect you choose to teach you lessons instead. I told the whole story, not naming my parents, but knowing they were hearing every word. I talked about the cockroach-infested apartment, the 3 jobs the hospital visit from malnutrition. I talked about the professors who fed me, the mentors who guided me, the strangers who showed more kindness than family. But here's what I learned, I continued. Sometimes being forced to build your own foundation means you build it stronger than those who inherit theirs. Sometimes losing everything means you appreciate everything you gain. And sometimes the family that chooses you becomes more precious than the family you're born into. The applause was thunderous, but I only noticed my parents leaving quietly through the back door. Later, my aunt told me my mother had sobbed through the entire speech, while my father sat frozen, finally understanding the full weight of what they'd done. A week later, I received a letter. Not an email or text, but an actual handwritten letter in my mother's careful script. Serenity, we heard every word of your speech. Every single word landed like it should have, with the weight of truth and the pain of recognition. We don't write seeking forgiveness or reconciliation. We write only to say this: we were wrong. Completely, utterly, unforgivably wrong. We told ourselves we were teaching you to be independent, but we were just being cowards. We couldn't face our own failures, so we made them yours to bear. We watched you struggle and convinced ourselves it was good for you when really we were just too proud to admit we'd failed you. You asked why we really did it, and the truth is even worse than what we admitted at dinner. We did have the money, not all of it, but enough. We chose the investments over you because we thought you were strong enough to make it anyway. We took your strength for granted. We gambled that you'd survive without us and lost the right to celebrate what you survived to become. Your father's health is declining. My spirit broke long ago. We live with the knowledge that our daughter, our brilliant, incredible daughter, succeeded not because of us, but in spite of us. That she had to find parents in strangers because her own parents chose pride over love. We don't ask for anything. We don't deserve anything. We just wanted you to know that we see it now, all of it. The cruelty disguised as teaching, the abandonment disguised as love, the pride that cost us everything that actually mattered. You changed the world, Serenity. You took the nothing we gave you and built something magnificent. We just wish we could have been the parents who helped you build it, instead of the ones who made it harder. With love, we no longer have the right to express Mom and Dad. I read the letter 3 times, then filed it away. There was nothing to say, no response that would change anything. They understood now, but understanding couldn't undo 8 years of unnecessary suffering. 2 months later, my father died. Another heart attack. This one, fatal. I attended the funeral sitting in the back, leaving before the reception. My mother tried to approach me, but I shook my head. And she stopped, understanding that some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. At the reading of his will, I discovered he'd left me something after all. Not money, they had none left, but his college diploma from Dartmouth and a note. This cost my parents $20,000 in 1980. It opened every door for me. Your success costing us nothing, but everything opened doors I never knew existed. I'm proud of you in ways I never had the right to be. I donated the diploma to Dartmouth's Alumni Association. Someone else's parents might appreciate the history. The final chapter of this story came last month. My mother called not for help or reconciliation, but with news. She'd been diagnosed with early-stage dementia. She wanted me to know in case medical history became relevant for me someday. I'm starting to forget things, she said simply, but I'll never forget what we did to you. That memory seems burned in a reminder of our greatest failure. Mom, I said, using the word for the first time in 8 years. Forget it, really. Let it go. You punished yourself enough. I can't forget it, she said. It's the clearest memory I have. You at 18, standing in the doorway saying you'd make your own way. You looked so young and so determined. I should have run after you. I should have emptied every account we had to keep my promise. Instead, I let you walk away because I was too proud to admit we were just as lost as you were. But I wasn't lost, I told her gently. I was finding myself. You gave me independence when you meant to give me struggle. What you never understood was that by forcing me to build my life without your foundation, you ensured I'd never need you again. But maybe that's what I needed to know. I could stand completely alone. No child should need that, she said. Every child should know their parents will catch them if they fall. But you didn't catch me, I said. So I learned to fly instead. There was a long silence. Then she said, your foundation. Could it help other parents understand before they make our mistake? That's what we're trying to do, I said. We have workshops for parents about supporting without enabling, about the difference between teaching independence and forcing abandonment. Good, she said. That's good. Maybe our mistake can prevent others. Maybe, I agreed. Serenity, she said as I was about to hang up. Yeah, I love you. We always loved you. We just loved our pride more. And that's something I'll regret even when I can't remember my own name. I know, I said. And I did know. They had loved me in their broken, conditional way. They just hadn't loved me enough to swallow their pride when it mattered most. As I write this story sitting in my office overlooking Boston Harbor, I can see my reflection in the window. 28 years old CEO of a company that helps hundreds of thousands of students, married to a man who understands my scars, surrounded by chosen family, who showed up when blood family didn't. My parents gave me independence, though not in the way they intended. They gave me the gift of knowing I could survive anything, overcome anything, build anything from nothing. They taught me that real family isn't about DNA or obligation, but about who shows up when you're at your lowest and helps you climb. Would I change it if I could? Would I go back and have parents who kept their promises, who paid for Stanford, who celebrated my achievements as their own? 5 years ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. Today, I'm not sure. The pain shaped me into someone who understands struggle, who can look a desperate student in the eye and say, I've been there and there's a way through. My success means more because it cost everything. My compassion runs deeper because I know what it feels like to be abandoned by those who should love you most. My parents refused to pay for college, saying I needed to be independent. They were right about one thing: I did become independent. Independent of their approval, their love, their presence in my life. They wanted to teach me that I didn't need them. Lesson learned. The irony is in trying to teach me to stand alone. They ensured that when they needed someone to lean on, I'd already walked away. But the greatest lesson wasn't about independence or self-reliance or any of the things they thought they were teaching. It was about resilience, about finding family in unexpected places, about building something from nothing and knowing it's truly yours. They gave me nothing, and in doing so gave me everything, the knowledge that I am enough entirely on my own. So here's my message to anyone watching who's been abandoned, betrayed, or forced to make their own way without the support you were promised. You are stronger than you know. The path will be harder than it should be, longer than it's fair to be, but you can walk it. Find your chosen family, the teachers who feed you, the strangers who become mentors, the friends who become siblings. Build your foundation. One minimum wage paycheck at a time, one community college credit at a time, one small victory at a time. And when you succeed, because you will succeed, remember that it's yours. No one can take credit for what you built from the nothing they gave you. No one can claim your success when they contributed only to your struggle. You earned every achievement, every accomplishment, every moment of joy after the pain. My parents refused to pay for college 8 years ago, and yes, they regret it now. But their regret doesn't undo my struggle, and my success doesn't absolve their choice. We are who our choices make us, and they chose to be the parents who broke a promise. I chose to be the daughter who succeeded anyway. And in the end, that's the only choice that mattered. What choice will you make with the hand you've been dealt? Whatever it is, know that someone who's been there is rooting for you. Someone who knows that sometimes the greatest gift is discovering you never needed the gift at all. You just needed to discover your own strength. And sometimes, unfortunately, that only comes when the people who should help you choose not to. Thank you for listening to my story. What challenges have you overcome without the support you deserved? Share your story in the comments below, because every survival story deserves to be heard. And remember, if you're struggling right now, wondering how you'll make it through, know that your current situation is not your final destination. It's just the beginning of your comeback story. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and triumph. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they can make it through their own challenges. Together, we can build a community of people who understand that sometimes the family we choose becomes stronger than the family we were born into. Thank you for being part of my chosen family, for listening, for understanding, and for walking your own difficult path with courage. Until next time, remember, you are enough exactly as you are, with or without anyone else's approval or support.